Welcome to today's video. Today we're doing events in Scriptable objects. I'm Monis and let's get started. So in Unity, I've already created two folders, a data folder and a script folder. Let's head into the script folder and create a new script. I'm going to start with a bool event and then we'll branch off to other events as well in the future. So first, let's open up our bool event and let's see what we have. So to add an event, we need a way to add listeners. And I'm going to use an action for this, or a list of actions. So let's do that. A list of action. And it's a bool event, so we'll take a type of bool. Let's call it actions, and then we create a new list. We need to include the namespace as well. Action is in the system namespace, so let's include that. Now we have a list. We need a way to add the listeners and to remove the listeners as well. We want to add a public void add listener. And what are we adding? We are adding an action of type bool to our list. So let's take in an action of type bool. Action, and all we need to do is add it to the list of action. There we go. Now we need a way to remove the listener as well. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it beneath and I'm going to change it to remove listener and change the method called to remove as well. Now we have a way to add listeners and remove listeners. The next thing we need to do to have an event is to raise the event as well. So let's create a third method, public void raise. What are we raising? A type bool there. So let's take in a bool called value. I'm going to do a for each to loop through all our actions so we can raise them with the value. For action in actions. And here we do action, invoke, and the value we are sending in. So now we have our way to add listeners, remove listeners, and raise the value. So now we need to create two new scripts to use this. We need an event raiser and a event listener. So let's go into Unity and create two new scripts. We right-click, create C# script, event listener. So I'm creating a listener first, and then I'm going to create an event raiser. So let's create the other script as well, event raiser. This is to listen and send the event. You can do this from any of your scripts in the future. This is just to show it and how it works. So let's start with the raiser. So in here, we need to take in the bool event we just created. So I'm going to create a serialized field, a private bool event. I'm going to call it bool event. And here, to raise the event, I'm going to use update to send the event. You can do it anywhere you want. I'm just going to do input get key down. And I'm going to use space. So whenever I press space, I will send the event. So we take bool event, and to send the event, we just need to raise the condition. So here I'm going to set it true, to send the true value. And then we can go to our listener. Let's go back, event listener. And in here, we also need to take in the bool event that we need to listen to. So let's do that again. Event on bool event. So when we are listening to something, I usually prefix them with on so I know that I'm listening and not raising the event here. So in start, we can listen to the event. So on bool event, add listener. This takes in a type of an action of type bool. So we need to create a new method to send in here. Let's do that. A private void on bool event. It takes in a type bool because that's the event we are sending. So let's go bool value. And now we can take this method and just send it in here and listen to it. So when the event happens, I'm just going to do a debug log and with the value. Now let's go into Unity to see how this works. So now we can create two new objects. I'm going to create a game object called event raiser, which will raise the event, and event listener that will listen to the event. So let's add these, event listener and the event raiser. The problem now is we can't raise the event because the bool event is a script. It's not a scriptable object. So we need to turn the bool event into a scriptable object. So let's do that. There are two things we need to do to change this into a scriptable object. The first is to inherit from scriptable object. The second is to add the attribute create asset menu. This takes a menu name. I'm going to write events bool event, and it takes a file name. I'm going to call it a bool event. So the menu name is the right-click menu in Unity, and the file name is the default file name the file will have when we create it. So now this is a scriptable object. So in Unity, we can go to a data folder, right-click, create. Now we see events and bool event. And now we have the event, so we can use this. Let's take our event raiser here, and let's put the bool event and the event listener and add the bool event there as well. And we'll hit play and see if this works. So now when I press space, it's sending true to our listener from our raiser. There's a problem with this though. Now if we have the listener and we disable the listener, we will still get the event. This might be the behavior we want, but usually it's not the behavior you want. So we can fix this easily by going into our listener If you see here, we added it to our start event, and that means we just add listeners, and even if the object is disabled, we still listen to it and it's still running. So to change this, there are two other methods we can use, which is on enable and on disable. So if we move the add listener to on enable, let's remove it from there, and then on disable, we remove the listener. Now, if we go back into Unity, let it compile, and then we play again, you will see that now it will be disabled. It will remove the listener when we disable the object. Nothing is happening now when I'm pressing space. And we enable it again, and you can see it's showing true. So this was a lot of code in the bool event to create an event. So let's see how we can make this a generic event to easily send any type of class in the future as an event. So let's head into bool events. In here we can see that the action is taking type bool everywhere, and we can make this generic to take in any type we want. So let's do that. Let's create a new class. Let's call it base event. I'm going to call it base event. And in here, I'm going to actually copy bool event, all the things we did in here, and I'm going to paste it in base event. And action, we need to import the system namespace as well. So here, to make this generic, we could take in type T. T means basically nothing. It's what we are sending in the future when we are using the base event. So if we take T and switch out all the bools, like this, now it's compiling nicely. So if we go into the bool event, we can actually inherit from our base event and instead of scriptable object. So let's do that. Base event. And what are we sending in? A bool. So now we're creating a base event of type bool. I can see now that we also need to create an inherit from scriptable object here to make it a scriptable object. So now in here we still have the create asset menu and the bool event. So if we go into Unity and refresh, nothing is going to change. So if we hit play mode, we can see that it's still working as it did before. See true, we can disable listener. It's not sending anything. Cool. So now we could add any type of class we would as an event. Let's do that. Let's add a, what should we do? Let's add a player data event. So here, if we want to say send a custom event, I'm going to create a new data class. I'm just going to call it player data. This could be any type of data you want to send or any class really. We need to inherit from base event, and it's going to send in player data, the class I just had here. Let's add a public int health and a public int mana and send this. It's a scriptable object, so we need to have a create asset menu to be able to create this somehow. So let's do this. Menu name would be event player data event, and file name would be player data event. All right. If we go into Unity now, we can create the scriptable object here. Let's create event with the player data event. Good. But we can't send these through our event racer and listener. If we open the racer, you can see it takes a bool event. If we now take in a player data event instead, then we can raise the new data we just made. So it's a player data, takes in a type health, 100, and mana, let's set 20. If we go to the listener, it's still a bool event, so let's make this a player data event instead. So now we have the method that takes in a bool of in here on bool event. So instead, if we take in a player data, which the event is sending, we can take that as a value. I'm going to change this to on player data event instead, so we know what it's doing. And in here we have the value, which would be health, and then we can also take mana to show that. If we go back to Unity, we need to add the new scriptable object to our racer. Since we changed the type of it, we need to add the references here. If we start now, we can see that sending this would send 100, which is the health, and 20, which is the mana. Send it twice. Disable listener. Still working as it should. That is how we create events in scriptable objects. Thank you for watching. The examples from the start of my video is on my GitHub. Links in the description, and I hope I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.